any legal representative or by me if there is a risk that the answer to that question would incriminate the witness. In shorthand form, this legal principle is known as the privilege against self-incrimination. I consider that fairness demands that I remind you of that principle before you begin your evidence. I should tell you that it is for you to make it clear to me in respect of any question put to you that it is your wish to rely upon the privilege against self-incrimination. If, therefore, questions are put to you by any of the lawyers or by me which you do not wish to answer, you must tell me immediately after such question is put. At that point, I will consider your objection and thereafter rule upon whether your objection should be upheld. I know that you are represented by experienced lawyers here today. No doubt, if the issue relating to self-incrimination arises, they will assist you if you need their assistance. So if at any stage during the questioning you wish to consult your lawyers about privilege against self-incrimination, you must tell me so that I can consider what appropriate action to take. Do you understand all that?
Thank you, Sir Wynne, and I plan to answer all the questions.
Right, fine. Over to you, Mr. Beer.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Ms Vennells. My name is Jason Beer. Can you give us your full name, please?
Paula Vennells.
Thank you for providing 2 witness statements to the inquiry and for attending today. Can we deal with your witness statements first, please? The first of them is dated the 8th of March 2024, and the URN for it is WITN 0102 0100. I wonder whether we could have that on the screen, please. It's 775 pages long, and I think there are 3 corrections that you wish to make to it. Can we deal with those first? Page 15, please. It will be brought up on the screen for you.
Thank you.
At paragraph 34, in the second line, it says, if this including personal relations issues, the marketing director would be consulted. Should that read public relations issues? It should. Thank you. Secondly, page 130. Do you see in the third line where it says questions 53 and 54 omitted as general questions? Should that read questions 53 and 54 are dealt with elsewhere in the statement?
It should.
Thank you. And then thirdly, page 194. B at the top, which is part of paragraph 405, it reads in the second line, too much reliance on the recollection of the mediation scheme's applicants. Instead of mediation scheme's applicants, should that read of subpostmasters?
It should.
Thank you. Can we turn to page 775, please? That's the statement of truth page. Did you sign that via DocuSign or some other electronic means?
I did.
And were the contents true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, they were.
Thank you. Can we turn to your second witness statement, please? WITN 0102 0200. This is your second witness statement. It's dated the 8th of April 2024. Is 23 pages long. Again, can we turn to page 23, please? and scroll down. Did you sign this witness statement using DocuSign or a similar electronic means?
I did.
And are the contents of that witness statement true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
They are.
Thank you. That they can be put to one side. Those witness statements are going to be uploaded to the inquiry's website. I'm not going to ask you questions about the contents of either of them in detail, in particular your first witness statement, because it's a very long witness statement, 775 pages, and in large measure narrates a number of documents that we have sent to you, and I'm interested in your personal recollection rather than what the documents show, if you understand. Before we address the issues of substance, which I'm going to do thematically rather than chronologically, I'd like, if I may, to address some overarching themes with you, and there are 7 of them.
Mr. Beer, I did want to make a short statement first, if I could.
Absolutely, you go ahead.
Right, thank you. I would just like to say, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to do this in person, how sorry I am for all that subpostmasters and their families and others have suffered as a result of all of the matters that the inquiry has been looking into for so long. I followed and listened to all of the human impact statements, and I was very affected by them. I remember listening to one postmaster whose name I noted, who said that he would like somebody to go and stand outside his old post office with him so he could tell them exactly what he'd been through. I would do that. I am very, very sorry. I would also like to repeat the apology which is in my witness statement to Alan Bates, to Ron Warmington and Ian Henderson from Second Sight, and to Lord Arbuthnot. I and those I worked with made their work so much harder, and I'm very, very sorry for that. My third apology is really about today, because I will answer the questions truthfully, and I'm very aware that they will be difficult to listen to for you and for me, and I ask your understanding in advance of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I should say there's going to be a fire alarm at 10 o'clock, and we're just going to sit here all together, listen to it, and then carry on afterwards. So some general issues, if I may. Ms. Vennells, in the light of the information that you tell us in your witness statement you weren't given, in the light of the documents that you tell us in your witness statement that you didn't see, and in the light of the assurances that you tell us about in your witness statement that you were given by post office staff, do you think you're the unluckiest CEO in the United Kingdom?
I was given much information, and as the inquiry has heard, there was information that I wasn't given and others didn't receive as well. One of my reflections on all of this is that I was too trusting. I did probe and I did ask questions, and I'm disappointed where information wasn't shared, and it has been a very important time for me, as I have gone through all of the documentation that I've seen since, to plug some of those gaps and to remind me what I did see and perhaps hadn't remembered.
Can I run through with you? I don't want to display them on the screen in the interest of time, but take it from me that these are accurate, short summaries of what you say in your witness statement. The things that you say that you weren't told and that you didn't see. Paragraph 104 on page 39. Nobody at the post office told you that there were bugs, errors or defects in Horizon, or that it lacked integrity, or even that there were allegations to that effect when you joined the post office in January 2007. Yes?
Yes.
Paragraph 109 on page 41. When you joined, you weren't briefed on the contract with Fujitsu, correct?
Correct.
Paragraph 114 on page 43. When Computer Weekly published its article in May 2009, you were told by Mike Young, the then operations director, that the magazine didn't know what it was talking about in relation to Horizon and assured you that there was nothing wrong with the Horizon system, correct?
Yes.
Paragraph 129 on page 50. You did not know at the time of the Computer Weekly article in May 2009 of the calendar square bug. You didn't know of the remming out bug. You didn't know about the reversals bug, the data tree failure bug, the phantom transactions bug, the concurrent logins bug, or the bureau de change bug, because nobody had told you about them, correct?
Correct.
Paragraph 133 on page 52. You were not made aware of the receipts and payments mismatch bug when it was discovered in September or October 2010. The first that you knew about it was in May 2013, correct?
Correct.
Paragraph 154 on page 61. You were not aware of the remming in bug, the local suspense account bug, the recovery bug, the withdrawn discrepancies bug, or the Leica top-up bug when you became managing director in October 2010, because nobody told you about them.
Correct.
Paragraphs 180 and 181 on page 75. You had no understanding of how suspense accounts operated during your time as network director or managing director, and if there were issues with suspense accounts, then you weren't made aware of them, correct?
Correct.
Paragraph 309 on page 143. You were not made aware of Richard Morgan KC's advice that if an independent expert examined Horizon and found faults with it, then that would open the floodgates to damages claims by convicted subpostmasters. You weren't told about that. Paragraph 388 on page 183. Your understanding until May 2013 was that no bugs had been found in Horizon, because that is what you had been told by a series of senior IT managers over the years.
Correct.
Paragraph 502 on page 246. Your incorrect understanding of the operation of the settle centrally function, in particular that it operated like a suspense account, allowing time for disputes to be resolved, came from reliance on incorrect information that you had been given by others in the post office.
Yes.
Paragraph 563 on page 271. You did not see Simon Clark's advice of the 15th of July 2013 until after you left the post office. Indeed, not until it was made public until 2021.
Yes.
Paragraph 564 on page 271. You did not see Simon Clark's advice of the 2nd of August 2013 about the head of security's instructions to shred documents relevant to Horizon bugs until after you had left the post office. Indeed, again, not until it was made public in 2021.
That's right.
Paragraph 568, page 273.
Attention, please. Attention, please. This is the system has now been completed.
Paragraph 568 on page 273. You did not see, nor were you briefed about, Brian Altman KC's advice of the 2nd of August 2013.
Correct.
Paragraph 686 on page 321. You did not read Brian Altman KC's general review of the 15th of October 2013 until you were provided it with a copy of it in the course of this inquiry by the inquiry.
That's right.
Paragraph 842, page 376. You were involved only to a limited extent in commissioning and reviewing advice from Linklater solicitors.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Yes, you were involved only to a limited extent in commissioning and then reviewing advice from Linklater solicitors.
I think that depends on which you're referring to. There was a report produced by Linklaters which came to the board, which was discussed. And in the preparation for that, I worked with a small group of colleagues from the EXCO and chased down a list of questions from the board. But my involvement in the formulation of the instructions, I had no involvement in the final formulation of the instructions.
Thank you. Paragraph 896, page 400. You say, although the failure to discuss the impact of Deloitte's 2014 report seems surprising now, you trusted Chris Oyard, Rod Williams and Linklaters to have advised you about the impact on criminal convictions, and they did not.
I'm so sorry. Could you say that one again, please? Because
Yes.
that was quite an important...
You say that although the failure to discuss the impact of Deloitte's 2014 report on criminal convictions seems surprising to you, you trusted Chris Oyard, Rod Williams and Linklaters to have advised you about this, that it was necessary to do so.
In that respect, yes. Yes.
And they did not do so.
Yes.
Paragraph 1155, you say that you did not see Brian Altman KC's advice of the 8th of March 2015.
I didn't see any advices, so I assume that's correct. I can't remember that one specifically.
Paragraph 1251, page 533, you did not see Jonathan Swift's written review of the 8th of February 2016
That's
at the
correct.
time. Paragraph 1341, page 579, you were not on the steering group for the group litigation, and Jane MacLeod was instead responsible for briefing the board about it.
That's correct. I was on the board subcommittee.
If all of the facts and matters that I've just described are true, and if what you say is reliable, was there a conspiracy at the post office which lasted for nearly 12 years, involving a wide range of people, differing over time, to deny you information and to deny you documents and to falsely give you reassurance?
No, I don't believe that was the case. You've covered a range of different issues. I have been disappointed, particularly more recently, listening to evidence at the inquiry where I think I have learned that people knew more than perhaps either they remembered at the time or I knew of at the time. I have no sense that there was any conspiracy at all. My deep sorrow in this is that I think that individuals, myself included, made mistakes, didn't see things, didn't hear things. I may be wrong, but that wasn't the impression that I had at the time. I have more questions now, but conspiracy feels too far-fetched.
There wouldn't be a motive for such people to deny you information, deny you documents, and falsely to give you reassurance where it wasn't warranted, would there?
I think you conflate too many different things, if I may, because you've covered bugs and IT, you've covered legal advices, the chairman's report by Jonathan Swift, I can't see that over that period of time that individuals working on all of those documents could have conspired or had a reason to withhold them. The inquiry heard from Susan Crichton, and this is a serious governance lesson, that it was not the practice in the Post Office and the legal team and in Royal Mail Group previously to share legal advices. They may have had very good reasons for that, some of which I'm sure were related to legal privilege, but they were not shared, and as Susan explained, the outcomes were discussed. So as we go through some of those documents, which we may do, I'm sure that I will recognise some of the recommendations. I have to say, having read some of them, particularly one of the Brian Altman advices, where he was, as he was reviewing prosecution policy, he was hugely critical of, prior to 2012-13, the documentation, the policies in place, the approach. That advice was never shared with me, with the group executive, with the board. Had we seen it, we may well have asked very, very different questions. What was shared was the outcome of that advice, and different policies and procedures were put in place. But I think there is too much reliance, or there was too much reliance, on the lead general counsels in that case, and I'm not particularly making a point about general counsels, but to take a decision as to what was shared from those reports, because what happened is they were then, as the inquiry seen, they were then reproduced into board documents, which were shared. But the original advice would have been so much more useful, and one of the biggest lessons for me in this is that advices should be, that boards, chief executives and group executives should know when advices are commissioned. They should know when they're received, because some were received that were not commissioned, and they should see them.
You focused on legal advice. I've asked you about a range of things, including the contract with Fujitsu, the information about bugs, errors and defects. If there isn't a conspiracy operative to deny you this information, what's the reason that so much of it didn't reach you?
The contract with Fujitsu would not have been... the contract with Fujitsu, sorry, let me start again, existed over a very, very long period of time, as the inquiry knows. I was involved with reviewing the strategy and some of the content of the contract with Fujitsu as we prepared to retender the Horizon system in up and during 2015. The original contract with Fujitsu and versions before that would not have crossed my desk as network director or as managing director. What should have happened is the service level agreements within that contract should have been reported on differently than they were. And that also might point to some of your points about bugs, errors and defects. Because if I turn to those, the reporting that the group executive, the chief executive and the board received, and the inquiry heard this from Leslie Sewell as well, was at different levels. So I think we had a level 0 and a level 1 that came to my level and to the board. Issues that cropped up below that were not reported. One of the biggest challenges, as I have been going through all of this documentation, is realising how much went on at an individual postmaster level. So when a bug affected large numbers of post offices, or there was an outage which affected large numbers of post offices, or a network failure, they were raised. But if a single sub-postmaster made a call X number of times to a service centre, it wouldn't have been picked up. And I think from a governance point of view, there is, and the point has been made previously, a very important lesson around the issue of the institution and the individual. How does somebody, as a chief executive of an institution this large and complex, have sight to what happens to an individual if they are affected by a bug? The only thing I can think about is that it ought to be possible to have data which reports the number of times a postmaster may complain about something, the number of disputes that have not been resolved, age disputes, disputes where postmasters have challenged them.
Isn't all this really obvious?
It is, and it wasn't in place, and it should have been.
If it was really obvious, why wasn't it in place?
I think because of the way that the reporting had been planned. Management information across many areas of a business tends to be written in layers of escalation. And the layers of escalation that were selected around IT and Fujitsu were such that it didn't. And I think this probably happens in many, many other large institutions too. It didn't give you, on a board, a line of sight to what happened to an individual. And we are seeing the terrible impact of that today.
So is the overall answer to my question that you don't believe that there was a conspiracy to deny you information and documents? The reason such information and documents didn't reach you was the way that the company was organised and structured?
I think in the majority of cases, yes, that is true.
And who was responsible for organising and structuring the company?
Sorry, if I may just say, the other point is that I have seen documents and I have heard evidence where I think colleagues did know more information than was shared, and in those cases either mistakes were made or they decided it wasn't appropriate to do so. To your first point, in terms of, sorry, could you say that again?
Yes. If it was the organisation and structure of the company that prevented this information and these documents from reaching you, who was responsible for organising and structuring the company after you became CEO?
I was responsible for... As CEO, you're accountable for everything. You have experts who report to you. So the decision on what would have been reported on IT, for instance, would have been decided by the IT director. When I was chief executive, in an attempt to get more on top of some of the issues that were reported, I asked Alistair Cameron, for instance, to put in place an operations board where it began to review some of those things that were raised. But in terms of what you put in a report, the IT reports the post office had were not that different from ones I've seen in other big corporate companies. The difference for the post office, as a result of what we're discussing here today, is that it somehow did, it was, at the time, it did not see what was happening in an individual post office, if that was, it was just at a level that didn't reach us, and that was wrong. And there needs to be different sort of reporting that would have flagged that.
In a note that Alice Perkins wrote before the departure of Susan Crichton to you, she said, quote, "It's the fact that she, that's Susan, sees so much as beyond her control that's the problem. It's her alibi." Do you think the same could be said of you?
No, definitely not. I asked questions, I oversaw the strategy which would have introduced changes where we felt it was appropriate to the organisation. I probed, I worked in a structured way and an informal way. I would walk around the desks in the organisation and talk to people just to find out what was going on. I was sometimes criticised in team development events for being too curious and stepping too much into people's territory. I don't think that's a criticism that could have been levelled at me.
You tell us that you always enjoyed a good relationship with Moya Green, the chief executive of Royal Mail Group, in your witness statement.
Yeah, we had a good working relationship.
You say, no need to turn it up, paragraph 259 on page 114, "I got on very well with Moya."
I got on very well with most of the people I work with, yeah.
I'm focusing on Moya Green at the moment. She overlapped very extensively as chief executive of Royal Mail Group, with your holding the most senior positions in the post office. Yes?
Yes.
She became CEO of Royal Mail Group in July 2010. You became MD of Post Office in October 2010.
Yes.
She left in 2018 and you left in early 2019.
Yes.
So a very substantial period of overlap. Can we look, please, at PVEN 50532? This is a new document for the inquiry, having been properly disclosed by you recently. It's an iMessage exchange with Moya Green, and I think you'll be familiar with it.
What was the reference again, Mr. Beer? Sorry.
PVEN 50532.
Thank you.
Can you help us to date it, please?
I think this is January this year.
You'll see that the way you've screenshotted it includes the words yesterday at 6:46. That doesn't literally mean yesterday from the day that you disclosed it to us. It was that captures.
I think Moya had been away. She had come back to the UK. I have a sense this is around January time because I think he was at the time of the ITV drama.
That would make sense because in the third paragraph it says Nick was a poor witness, chairman gone. That's a reference to Mr. Staunton, yes?
I believe so.
And he resigned, I think, or was required to resign on the 27th of January 2024.
Yes.
Let's just read through it. Paula, I'm just back in the UK. What I have learned from the inquiry / parliamentary committee questions is very damaging. Nick, that's Nick Reed, yes?
Yes.
Nick Reed was a poor witness. Chairman, as we've established, that's Mr. Henry Staunton, correct, yes? Has gone. He will be next. When it was clear the system was at fault, the Post Office should have raised a red flag, stopped all proceedings, given people back their money, and then tried to compensate them from the ruin this caused in their lives. Moya. And then if we go down, please, the next page. Keep going. You say in reply, yes, I agree. This is taking too long, Moya. The toll on everyone affected is dreadful. I hope you had a good break and are well. Best wishes, Paula. Moya Green. I don't know what to say. I think you knew. Moya. You reply, no, Moya, that isn't the case. She replies, I want to believe you. I asked you twice. I suggested you get an independent review, reporting to you. I was afraid you were being lied to. You said the system had already been reviewed multiple times. How could you not have known? Over the page. And scroll down. Moya, the mechanism for getting to the bottom of this is the inquiry. I've made it my priority to support it fully. Moya Green. The Post Office did not. They dragged their heels. They did not deliver documents. They did not compensate people. Paula, you appealed the judge's decision. I'm sorry. I can't now support you. I've supported you all these years to my own detriment. I can't support you now after what I have learned at Moya. You'll see in the course of that exchange, Moya Green accuses you of knowing.
Yes.
Did you understand that to be an accusation that you knew about bugs, errors and defects in Horizon?
No, I understood this to be Moya, and there is a further series of exchanges of text where Moya steps back a little bit from the challenges that she's putting here. I understood that Moya had returned to the country earlier this year, that she had been listening to all of the information in the inquiry, and she was trying to square her memory with what she was hearing. That's
If we go up a page, please. She says in the second text down there, I think you knew, and you say that isn't the case. What did you think you were denying?
I think Moya was possibly suggesting there that there was some conspiracy, as you mentioned earlier, and as I said, I didn't believe that was the case. She may have been saying that I think it's the same thing. I was going to say about a cover-up, but the same thing.
At the text at the foot of the page, she asks you the question, how could you not have known? And your reply, if we scroll down, you don't answer that question, do you?
No, and I didn't not answer that question. I was very concerned because I was aware that it is not good practice to be exchanging texts in the middle of an inquiry. And so I simply wanted to say to her that the place for resolving all of this was the inquiry. It wasn't that I should or shouldn't have answered her question.
Ms. Vennells, we've got a lot of your text messages.
Yes.
You have been exchanging text messages with a lot of people, including in the currency of this inquiry, haven't you?
Not since the inquiry became a public inquiry. I exchanged texts in relation to the Select Committee in 2020 and
the setting up of the inquiry.
And when the inquiry was non-statutory. And then I understood, and the reason I exchanged those texts was to try to help to give good information to the Select Committee and to the inquiry. The intention of all of those texts that were exchanged was entirely positive.
You don't answer the question, how could you not have known? What's the answer to that question that the Chief Executive of Royal Mail Group is asking you? How could you not have known?
This is a situation that is so complex. It's a question I have asked myself as well. I have learned some things that I didn't know as a result of the inquiry. And I imagine that we will go into some of the detail of that. I wished I had known.
That's not the issue. The question is, how come you didn't?
I think the question then is which question am I trying to answer? That the inquiry, that there were two trials. There was the Common Issues trial and there was the Horizon Issues trial. If I take the Common Issues trial, I did know a number of aspects that came up during that trial and where Judge Fraser found that the Post Office needed to change its practices and its contract. In terms of the onerous nature of the contract, I was in the board meeting where the board reviewed that contract as a result of the Linklaters advice, which we touched on previously, and we were given very straightforward advice that the contract was an acceptable contract. One of my regrets is, and it's in my statement, is that during that meeting, a relational contract was mentioned, and I remember thinking, that is the nature of the way I would like the Post Office to work with its subpostmasters. And I believed that that was what we were doing, and therefore the legal advice with continuing with the agency contract could be followed. In terms of the IT side, that I think is much more difficult. I wish I had known more on that. I did not know until 2018 when Mr. Coyne submitted his evidence on the numbers of bugs in the system, and the serious numbers of bugs in the system, and the interventions going on. And I should have known about that.
But why didn't? That's what I'm asking, not whether you wish.
Yes.
You had known. It's why didn't you?
That goes back to my earlier point, I believe, around management information, around possibly Fujitsu not sharing as much as it could or should have done, around possibly people knowing that the system itself lacked integrity, around corporate memory. One of the biggest lessons for governance in this was when I joined the Post Office in 2007, there was absolutely no corporate memory alive, at least, of the inception of the Horizon system. I had no idea that it was a system that had been designed for a completely different purpose, that the Post Office had had to struggle to take it on, that the decisions...
How come we've been able to find it out? Just by asking for the documents? Thousands of documents about the birth of Horizon, the involvement of the DWP and the Benefits Agency, the splitting off, the contract, the acceptance incidents. You say that corporate memory didn't exist. All of the documents were there. We've got them. We've looked at them. We spent 5 months looking at them.
You're right, and I didn't. There is an issue of unknown unknowns. If you don't know something exists, it's difficult to ask questions about it. That is why the importance of governance, particularly around corporate memory on bad things rather than good things, there was plenty of good corporate memory in the Post Office, is important to have. I simply didn't have that information.
Cutting through this exchange reveals that even the chief executive of the Royal Mail Group, who supported you over all those years, doesn't believe you, does she?
That's what this particular text says. Whether Moya still feels the same, I'm not sure, and you would have to ask her.
You point in this exchange to the importance of the inquiry, and can I turn to that now as a second general topic? Can we look at pages 2 and 3 of your witness statement, please? Paragraph 5, which is at the bottom. You say, I'd like to offer my genuine and unreserved apologies to all those affected by the matters giving rise to this inquiry. I apologise that I and those working for me failed the subpostmasters and their families. I'm deeply sorry they've suffered in such a distressing way. I watched the inquiry's human impact evidence and heard subpostmasters describe what they had been through, how isolated they felt, and how they had been unsupported by the Post Office. They described the life-changing experiences they and their families have endured for so many years. I am so very sorry that so much of this happened whilst I was a member of the senior management team and then CEO. I also offer my apologies to Alan Bates, Ian Henderson, Ron Warmington, Lord Arbuthnot, and all those who worked with them to secure justice for the sub-postmasters. They had the right insights. They were right to persevere. I'm sorry for where I made their task harder. Some of which you said first thing this morning. And then can we go forward, please, to page 774. And paragraph 1800. You say, I've been asked to reflect on my time at the Post Office and to set out whether there's anything I would have handled differently with hindsight. And then 1801, as a result of my commitment to this statement and to the work of the inquiry, which has been my priority, I've had much to consider. With the benefit of hindsight, there are many things I and the Post Office should have done differently. I'm now reflecting with care on these matters and will expand upon them and answer as fully as possible when I give my evidence to the inquiry. These reflections will demonstrate my deep remorse. So our request, which was made in August 2023, so 7 months before you provided this witness statement, was for you to, quote, reflect on your time at the Post Office and set out whether there was anything you would have handled differently with hindsight. Yes? You explain in paragraph 1801 that there are many things you would have done, that you should have done differently, and the Post Office should have done differently, and you will expand upon them and answer them fully when you give your evidence in May, i.e. today. Given you provided a 775-page witness statement that took 7 months to write, Could you not have reflected on what you should have done fully and differently within the witness statement?
Yes, I could have put more into it. And I'm sorry if that wasn't helpful. I read so many documents and worked a long time to try and prepare this, and disclosures are coming out all the time. I would be very happy to tell the inquiry now. I have a list of things in my head, and I hope that I will be able to bring them out as we went through the statement. Equally, I would be more than happy to submit a further statement to set that out.
But given that you took 775 pages and 7 months to write this, why didn't you do so then, given that we'd ask you that direct question? Were you adopting a wait-and-see approach? Let's see what comes out in evidence, see what I've got to admit, and then I'll admit that.
No, not at all, Mr. Beard. That's not the way I work.
So why didn't you assist us by setting out in this document what your reflections were?
It was simply a matter of time. The inquiry asked me, I think, over 600 questions, two or 300 with sub-questions in each. I went through probably hundreds of thousands of documents, and my memory was not very good at the beginning of this process. It has improved as I've gone through the documentation, and that was important. And by the time I got to December last year, when the draft went in, I had simply run out of time to answer these questions properly. They are very serious questions. Questions 189 and 190 in the list that the inquiry sent to me. I would be happy to write them up in much more detail, or I would be happy to share with you now or as we go through those reflections. It was absolutely not a wait and see.
Can I turn to the third topic, please, which is what you think went wrong? Can we go back to paragraph 4 of your witness statement, please, which I think is on page 2. And if we scroll down, please, you say you have been shown and read thousands of documents from the inquiry's disclosure when you were writing this witness statement, yes?
Yes.
And you've done your best to refer to all relevant documents and answer all questions fully.
Yes.
But you're sure you may have missed some or overlooked some inadvertently.
Yes.
And then can we go forwards, please, to page 774. And paragraph 1802. Thank you. In the second line, you say, I'm genuinely sorry. I finished this statement by repeating my apologies to the subpostmasters and their families and to all who have suffered so much from this terrible miscarriage of justice. And then this, their lives were torn apart by being wrongly accused and wrongly prosecuted as a result of the Horizon system. I just want to focus on the words, as a result of the Horizon system. Even after all the inquiry has revealed, and after all of the documents, thousands that you've read, do you continue to think that the issue was with the computer system, the Horizon system, as opposed to the conduct, competence, and ethics of those within the post office?
No, not at all. And apologies that that's not clear. There were numbers of debates about what the Horizon system meant. No, what I meant to say, or what I should have said, is as a result of all of the matters relating to Horizon and all of the issues that were discussed that the inquiry is looking at.
This suggests that you think that the issue was with the system, not the people that were responsible for the conduct of prosecutions, the people that were responsible for the conduct of investigations, and indeed those responsible for their supervision, oversight and governance, doesn't it?
That was not what I intended to convey at all.
Is this a perpetuation, what we see in this simple sentence here, of a culture that ran through the post office of failing to take responsibility for the use of powers that it elected to use, and indeed use robustly, and instead blame the IT?
No, it isn't that at all, and I completely agree with what is contained in your question. The tragedy that we're dealing with today is a result of something much, much broader than an IT system. Yes, that underpinned some of it, but the issues are much, much broader.
The words that you finished the statement with here, this last two sentences, are exactly the same words that you used, they're a cut and paste, when you were announcing that you were returning your CBE to the King, correct?
I don't recall that, but if you say so, yes.
Yes, they're a cut and paste. I
Right.
looked online to see the words that you delivered when apologising and explaining the return of the CBE. Is that how you thought then? That it's the computer system that was the problem, not the people?
No, Mr. Beer, I didn't. I've just explained it. It was a poor use of words. This was far more complicated than just the Horizon system.
Does it reflect a fundamental failure to understand how profound a power the post office chose to exercise when it prosecuted people at scale, and how serious and broad the use of that power was?
No, because I wrote this in hindsight. I think at the time your question is valid. The post office didn't realise all of that.
Can I turn to the fourth topic, please, which is whether your priority in your time at the post office was to protect the business? Can we turn up, please, poll 0010 2438? Can you see an email exchange between you and Jane McLeod, Mark Davis and Alistair Cameron, with other people copied in,
Yes.
of the 3rd of August 2015? You say, I've listed below some questions and requests. And then in the second paragraph, you say this, as presumably per my earlier note, our priority is to protect the business and the thousands who operated under the same rules and didn't get into difficulties. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
By this stage, as I think we're going to see, August 2015, the post office and you personally were aware of at least 3 bugs that had impacted on sub-postmaster balances in different ways, correct?
Yes.
Why were you still happy to identify as a priority, to wheel out the message again, that because many branches had not complained, that supported the post office position, that those who were complaining, their complaints shouldn't really be attributed to Horizon?
I'm sorry, first of all, because this reads badly today. At this point in time, my recollection is that the post office team working on the cases of the sub-postmasters, there were 136, I think, that went into the scheme and were being investigated. I had, and the board had been given the information that no issue had been found that had caused the problems for those sub-postmasters, either as a result of the Horizon system, or, and I'm sure in some cases that they had found something that the post office itself had not done correctly. But in my mind, I was of the understanding that the cases we were looking at were a minority, and the vast majority of those operating in the business had not encountered the same issues. That I wasn't saying...
Can I just test you on
Yes.
your logic there? Why does that logic follow? There are lots of sub-postmasters for whom Horizon is working. We should concentrate on them. They're our priority, not the people for whom it's not working, who complain about a bug, error or defect.
Two responses to that, if I may. The latter one is we were concentrating on those who had raised issues individually, and that was part of the scheme.
That's not your
And
priority, according to this.
Then this is this is badly worded, because
Why is it badly worded?
I'm juggling two priorities, and I'm only talking about one here.
You don't say that here. That would have been a more acceptable way to say things.
It would have been a more acceptable thing
and
to
no
say.
doubt you wish you had, but you didn't.
No, I didn't.
You said our priority is to protect the people who aren't complaining.
That wasn't how I intended it to be read. We had just spent 3 years investigating with Second Sight, and I accept all of the things that went wrong through that process, which I'm sure we will come to. But we had prioritised more than any other time in the Post Office looking into issues raised by individuals. I had been told, and the Inquirer has heard other people say the same, that nothing had been found. And so my understanding at this time was that the way the business was operating was an acceptable way. And what I was trying to say here is that we needed to make sure that the business as it was operating remained a priority for us. I wasn't excluding the other, but it can be read that way, and I accept it.
Was this a message that was also disseminated within the business, and in particular to those who worked the help desks, when they responded to calls from distressed sub-postmasters? The system works for everyone else. It's just you that's the problem, not the system.
Oh, no, there's no way that the organisation would have disseminated something like that. The people who worked in the call centres, and I visited on a number of occasions and listened into calls, were very keen to make sure that they gave the help to the people who phoned in. But I am very sorry, because I'm very aware that so many sub-postmasters phoned in so many times and didn't, and we're talking over a 20-year period, but phoned in so many times and were not given the help they needed.
Well, worse than that, they were told that you're the problem, the sub-postmaster.
Yes, I've heard
You're
that.
the only person that's complaining about this.
I have heard that. I can't comment on individual cases, and I'm very sorry that was the case.
Separately, by this time, August 15, you hadn't seen the Clark advice of the 15th of July about
No.
Gareth Jenkins, 2013, but you had, I think, been made aware that there was a problem with the Fujitsu expert, which problem could create a duty of further disclosure that might undermine past criminal convictions. I'm summarising what you say in your statement.
Yes, yes.
Was that not a cause for concern when there were repeated complaints in respect of Horizon? i.e., I've been told that there has been an issue raised about the evidence given by the Fujitsu expert, which may create a duty of further disclosure. Why would your priority still be on protecting the business in the light of that?
My priority, I had a number of priorities as Chief Executive. To your question about the Simon Clark advice and Gareth Jenkins, the way that had been explained to me was that Gareth Jenkins had not disclosed, and I can't remember whether it was 1 or 2 bugs, which were not relevant to the case that he had been giving evidence on. And I can remember a conversation with Leslie Sewell very clearly, because she was incredibly frustrated that he was now going to be stood down as what we understood at the time to be an expert witness, having not shared information which was not relevant to a case. And the logic didn't seem to stand scrutiny, but what was explained by the lawyers is that because he had done that, he then had to be stood down. I don't think that had any...
Sorry, just we're going to come back to this in detail
Right,
whilst you're on it. Is that your memory of it?
Yes.
Of what you were told?
Yes.
That this was completely illogical? Why are we standing down this Fujitsu man?
Yes, I had two conversations. I don't know if you want to cover that now or later.
Well, just briefly now to get your evidence. Neither of these conversations are documented, correct?
I think they're in my statement, actually.
Yeah.
Yes,
What you said now.
there's no further documentation
No.
of them, no. So the first I learned was I bumped into Leslie Sewell in the corridor. She was looking particularly grumpy, and I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "I've just found out that..." And I didn't remember the name, and there's documentation that shows I didn't, but that she probably would have said that the Fujitsu expert had been stood down because he hadn't disclosed two bugs which were not relevant in a case where he had given evidence.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I then had a further conversation with Susan Crichton to say, this doesn't quite make sense to me. Why is he being stood down? And she explained that there was a duty of disclosure now, that what we had to do was to go back over the cases where he had given evidence and inform them of this event.
And just, again, capturing things, we know that there was a written advice
Yes.
from an independent barrister.
Yes.
Do you know why neither of them said, "Paula, it's all explained here," which would have told you a very different story?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea, and I find it unacceptable. I
Do you
should
think they
have
were trying
seen
to
it.
protect you from information that you would find difficult to hear?
No,
We best not tell the boss.
no, absolutely not.
Because the account that you've given is very different from what the documents reveal.
Yes, I agree. I should have seen them. The board should have seen them. Susan Crichton explained to the inquiry that it was not the way of working in the post office to disclose legal advice as they should have been. And to your point about people hiding bad news from me, no, on the contrary, I put in place a campaign at one stage which was called Bad News is Good News, to encourage people to come to share difficult information, because it's very important when you're running an organisation, particularly at the level of chief executive, that sort of information is shared with you.
Can I move to my fifth topic then, please? You knew, that can come down that document, thank you. You knew and worked very closely with Alistair Cameron for a number of years, didn't you?
Yes,
And presumably you trusted him.
yes.
He told us last week, from the time that he joined the business, that's January 15, until the time that you left, that's April 2019, that you did not believe that there had been any miscarriages of justice. In his words, quote, "You could not get there emotionally." Did you believe, right up until the point at which you left the business, that there had been no miscarriages of justice?
I was told multiple times, and I'm very aware of the questions that have been asked around the Select Committee in 2015, that there had been no evidence found. The inquiry heard from Patrick Bork, I think last week or the week before, where Fujitsu records had been checked to see if there was a scar, and everything was golden. I was told that there had been, that nothing had been found.
So is the answer that you did believe, right until you left the business in April 2019, that there had been no miscarriages of justice?
I think that's right.
Was that because you could not, at an emotional level, reach the opposite view?
No, you will see there are 2 or 3 examples in documentation where even in 2016, I received a communication from Tim McCormack, who I did speak to or communicate with. And Tim pointed out that Mrs. Misra's case had now been referred, I think, or the police had been brought in to look at whether Post Office investigators had not operated correctly in her case. I don't remember the detail, and I don't think there was matters of detail in his email. I immediately reacted to that by asking Tom Weschler to look into it, and in the email I say, I want you to suspend any, these may not be the right words, but I want you to suspend any judgment around Sparrow, and that we will take whatever conclusion comes from this. What actually happened is that Mrs. Misra's case had gone to the CCRC, and so that it was left with the CCRC to look through. But no, absolutely not.
So Mr. Cameron's wrong to suggest that you believed there had been no miscarriages of justice because you could not reach the opposite view at an emotional level.
You can't be a chief executive and rely solely on your emotions, no.
Mr. Cameron told us that you were clear in your conviction from the day he joined until the day that you left, that nothing had gone wrong. Is that correct? Was that your belief?
I don't think he's right in that view.
Were you clear in your convictions that nothing had gone wrong in your time at the Post Office, so far as Horizon was concerned and the prosecution of subpostmasters was concerned?
No, not at all. There were problems with Horizon all the way through my tenure.
Mr. Cameron told us that you never deviated from or seemed to doubt that. Is that right, that you never deviated from your path?
No, he's completely wrong.
Can we turn, please, to JARB 601? These are the notes of a meeting between you, we can just see you at the foot of the screen there, other Post Office personnel, and a group of MPs, including Lord Arbuthnot. Yes?
Yes.
It's dated the 18th of June 2012. And can we look, please, at page 2, where you're recorded as saying, Paula Vennells continued, she said that temptation is an issue, but that trust in the Post Office brand is absolutely paramount. The Post Office needs competent, trustworthy people on staff, and its processes and systems must be transparent and work well. Of the 1,800 sub-postmasters and mistresses currently employed, only a tiny number are presenting cases where there is an issue of alleged fraud involving the Horizon system. The problem, therefore, is relatively small.
I think
Horizon
you actually said 1,800, but it's 11,800.
Thank you, sir. The problem is, therefore, relatively small. The Horizon system is very secure. Every keystroke used by anyone using the system is recorded and auditable. When things go wrong in a sub-post office, there is a helpline which staff can call 7 days per week during office hours, and backup staff who will help further if things go wrong. It's here that issues are normally resolved. It appears that some sub-postmasters have been borrowing money from the post office account or till in the same way they might do in a retail business, but this isn't how the post office works. Post office cash is public money, and the post office must recover it if any goes missing. And then this, every case taken to prosecution that involves the Horizon system thus far has found in favour of the post office. And then a similar line, if we can remember that one, to go over to page 3. Just at the foot of the screen there, you are recorded as saying, going back to Andrew Brigham's question, there had not been a case investigated where the Horizon system had been found to be at fault. Is what we read here, every case taken to prosecution has found in favour of the post office, there hasn't been a case investigated where the Horizon system has been found to be at fault, a reflection of the unwavering belief that Mr. Cameron spoke about, that nothing had gone wrong, there had been no miscarriages of justice, and you refused to deviate from those lines?
It isn't a representation of that. It is, though, a representation of the information that I was given. In, I think, January 2012, the General Counsel told the board exactly this, and the inquiry has seen this statement, I think, made by other colleagues. It was an understanding in the organisation which I now know is completely incorrect.
You know it's incorrect because you know that by the time you were speaking here, Nicola Arch, the branch manager at Chalford Hill Post Office in Stroud, Gloucestershire, having been accused of stealing £24,000, had been acquitted by a jury in April 2012, having blamed Horizon for the alleged shortfalls at her branch, don't you?
I didn't know that information.
You know now.
I know now, yes.
You know now that Maureen McKelvey, the sub-postmistress at Clannabogan in Omagh, accused of stealing £30,000, had been acquitted by a jury, having blamed Horizon for the cause of losses of money of which she was accused of stealing. You know that now.
I know that now.
You know now that Susan Palmer, the sub-postmistress at Grange Post Office in Rayleigh, had been acquitted by a jury in January 2007, Mrs. Palmer having blamed Horizon at trial for the losses said to have been attributable to her. Why were you telling these parliamentarians that every prosecution involving the Horizon system had been successful and had found in favour of the Post Office?
I fully accept now that the Post Office, excuse me, the Post Office knew that. I completely accepted. Personally, I didn't know that, and I'm incredibly sorry that that happened to those people and to so many others.
You'd received a detailed briefing for the purposes of this meeting, hadn't you?
Yes, I had.
There had been successive drafts of a briefing pack prepared for you. And it was about 20 pages long, the briefing pack.
Yes, I can remember it.
Can we look, please, at poll 309 6640? This is the final version of the briefing pack for this very meeting. We're familiar with it. If we go to page 2, we can see the agenda and how the meeting was chunked up, who was going to speak to which issue. And you were going to speak at point 3 to the background.
Yeah.
And then if we go over the page to page 3, we can see what Alice Perkins was going to deliver as key messages. And then over the page to page 4, we can see your section.
Yeah.
Yes? Topic 3, background. And we can see all of the bullet points in detail on that page, yes?
Yes.
Where does it say there that every case taken to prosecution that involves the Horizon system has been found in favour of the Post Office?
I'm not sure that it does it?
It doesn't.
No.
Where does it say there that there had not been a case investigated where the Horizon system had been found to be at fault?
I don't see it.
Where does it say there anything about temptation and sub-postmasters having their hands in the till, treating it like a retail business?
That I remember was discussed in the meeting.
Yes, where does it say it here?
If it isn't there, Mr. Beer, I'd take your
Where
word
does it
for
say here that every keystroke is recorded?
I believe that was picked up by Leslie Sewell.
Yes, where does it say here?
If it isn't there, it isn't there.
No. So why are the things that postmasters have been led into temptation, that every case that has been prosecuted we've won, not appear in your briefing for this meeting, but are the very things that you said to this group of parliamentarians?
when you're in a meeting, you take the briefing in with you, and then you supplement it or raise things that you consider also appropriate in the meeting.
Isn't the purpose of a briefing that it's gone through a process, that the right people have been involved in it? I mean, we've seen the back issues of this, the email exchanges between the relevant people, IT and legal, to get the key messages recorded right. Are you saying that you put this to one side and you freestyle in the meeting?
No, not at all. I would have used the briefing and I would have added in, as anybody does, I think, given a briefing, to further information that I thought was relevant. What I did want to see, because I can see Mrs. Hamilton sitting there, is that I did not realise at the time, when the details of her case were presented in this meeting, that the Post Office had more detail in the prosecution file than was shared with us at the time, and I'm very sorry about that.
Very slowly, I'm being attacked by drips. And I mean drips in the proper sense of the word.
Yes. I
I noticed that something landed on my face, then my hand, now my book. But please carry on till the break, and then we'll see if I can avoid the drips.
So I don't think that's tolerable for you, a form of Chinese water.
How far away are we?
Let's take the break now, sir, and we'll see whether we can get that sorted.
All right, thank you.
Can we say until 5:15, please?
Yeah, fine. You go with the usher, Miss Vennells, and I'll follow you.